The global economic landscape is shifting rapidly. On October 4, 2025, the United States, led by President Donald Trump, has threatened a 100% tariff on all goods from the BRICS nations, a move that shatters decades of trade norms. This isn't just about trade, it's a direct challenge to the structure of global commerce, triggered by the BRICS bloc's push to reduce reliance on the US dollar. The BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and new members like Saudi Arabia represent a massive share of global economic power. The US frames its tariffs as defending economic sovereignty, while BRICS leaders condemn what they call economic coercion. Brazil's President Lula da Silva summed up the bloc's defiance. "We don't want an emperor. This is a clash of ideologies, unilateral US strength versus multipolar cooperation, now playing out in global trade. The world is watching as the future of alliances, the dominance of the dollar, and the stability of the global economy hang in the balance. Quiet diplomacy is over. A loud, perilous economic showdown has begun." The confrontation began with Trump's post-election warnings to BRICS, "Don't undermine the dollar." By February 2025, the White House floated a 100% tariff on all BRICS imports, directly linking it to their de-dollarization efforts. In April, a new baseline 10% tariff was announced for most trading partners, with harsher penalties for those challenging US interests. The summer saw further escalation. In July, Trump announced an extra 10% tariff on any country supporting anti-American BRICS policies. A July 9th deadline was set for countries to sign new trade deals with the US or face even steeper tariffs. The August 1st deadline for the 100% tariffs loomed, signaling a dramatic shift in US trade policy. This was a calculated strategy, using the power of the US market as geopolitical leverage. By layering threats and deadlines, the administration aimed to disrupt BRICS momentum and force countries to choose sides. The old rules of global trade no longer apply in Washington's view. The world has been put on notice. The US tariff threat is about defending the dollar's dominance and American primacy. BRICS talk of a common currency is seen as a direct threat to the exorbitant privilege of the dollar. The 100% tariff is meant to make de-dollarization too costly for BRICS. Politically, this strategy appeals to Trump's base, projecting strength against rivals like China and Russia. The tariffs are a symbol of reasserted sovereignty and a rejection of a multipolar world order. The US is also trying to fracture the BRICS coalition by threatening secondary tariffs on their partners. The bet: most countries will choose access to the US market over aligning with BRICS. This is a high-risk, high-reward gamble, short-term pain for long-term dominance. The US believes its economic might can force compliance. But if the gamble fails, it could backfire spectacularly. The outcome will define the next era of global relations. At the July 2025 Rio Summit, BRICS leaders responded to US threats with unity and defiance. Their joint declaration condemned rising tariffs and protectionism, calling them threats to global recovery. Lula da Silva's "We don't want an emperor" jabbed at US unilateralism. China and Russia emphasized that trade wars have no winners, and that BRICS seeks a fairer world order. The bloc doubled down on de-dollarization, accelerating plans for alternative payment systems and local currency trade. The inclusion of Saudi Arabia and the UAE opens the door to pricing oil outside the dollar, a blow to the petrodollar system. In the short term, this sets the stage for a damaging trade war. In the long term, it could hasten the rise of a non-dollar economic system. The Rio Summit drew a new line in the sand. A US-BRICS trade war would be mutually destructive. The Peterson Institute projects US GDP would drop by $432 billion, with severe inflation and business failures. American consumers would see prices double on goods from China, Brazil, and India. US companies relying on BRICS supply chains would face chaos and soaring costs. BRICS economies would also suffer, China hardest, but all would see lower growth and higher inflation. The tariffs would drag down global growth, risking a worldwide recession. Countries with ties to both blocs, like those in Europe and Southeast Asia, would be caught in the crossfire. Global supply chains would be thrown into disarray, shattering the dream of seamless global trade. Investment would plummet and market volatility would surge. The world economy would fracture into inefficient competing fortresses. At the heart of this conflict is the future of the US dollar. The BRICS push for de-dollarization, using local currencies and building new payment systems, directly challenges American power. The inclusion of energy giants like Saudi Arabia and Iran amplifies this threat, as oil could be priced outside the dollar. If successful, this would undermine the petrodollar system and weaken the dollar's global supremacy. Still, experts say dethroning the dollar is a monumental task. No other currency matches its liquidity and safety. The US dollar remains the world's reserve currency for a reason. Ironically, aggressive US tariffs and sanctions may accelerate the search for alternatives. Countries may diversify reserves and trade practices for security. The seeds of a multipolar currency world are being planted. The dollar's reign won't end overnight, but its long-term erosion may be the unintended result of US policy. The future of global finance is now in flux. This conflict marks the rise of a new geopolitical divide: US unilateralism versus BRICS-led multipolarity. Nations are being forced to choose sides, with neutrality becoming increasingly difficult. Developing countries face a dilemma: align with BRICS' vision or maintain access to the US market and dollar system. Global institutions like the WTO and IMF are losing relevance as new blocs and rules emerge. The world is moving toward fragmentation: regional blocs, competing systems, and heightened volatility. The 100% tariff threat is a watershed moment, pushing the world toward economic and political fracturing. The integrated global economy is splintering into rival spheres of influence. The risks are immense: recession, instability, and even conflict. The choices made now will shape the world for decades to come.